Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Tiffany, a retired librarian turned homeschool mom. And in this video, we're going to look at the short little picture book called The Paper Sun. Now, pardon me, this is on my tablet. I borrowed this picture book from my library, and this book definitely represents why sometimes this don't work. So this is The Paper Sun. So that's the cover of the book, at least in ebook form. And no, I can't turn it sideways. It won't let me. I think the other previous book I was able to. This one's not letting me do it. So the author of this book, and I'm going to let's pronounce this. Who the heck is the author of this book? All right, it's being irritating. So we will get to the author at some point. This is the artwork. You can kind of see it here. Again, it will not let me turn it sideways. Otherwise, it would be better. So it's beautiful artwork. It tells. So yeah. It's the Paper Sun, the inspiring story of Tyrus Wong, Immigrant and Artist. So the author looks like it's Julie Leung, and the illustrator is Chris Sasaki. In the description, you'll check. I'll put the author's name so you can read them. So this story, you can see it's beautiful, very beautifully done artwork. Tells the story of a young man, and I'm going to increase my sizing. Here we go. This looks a little bit better. You can see some of the artwork through the tablet here. Of a man who's, well, his artist name was Tyrus Wong. His real name was Wong Gung Yao. And he immigrated to the United States from China during the height of basically the times where they were doing their best to prevent immigration, specifically immigration from Asia or China. So as opposed to hearing the stories of people coming in through New York and Ellis Island, this is a little bit less known to a lot of people, people coming to Angel Island. So that was the San Francisco, this was in San Francisco Bay, is where Angel Island's at. Some people, if you're familiar with the Alcatraz story, they made the mistake of thinking the prisoners went to Angel Island. It's a different story. But originally, at least for a while, Angel Island was the Ellis Island of the West. So what happened here is again, this does not do the pictures. This literally has me scroll through the entire thing. So this is kind of the story. This artist was a paper son, and you had paper daughters as well. In order to bring family over, particularly Chinese people had to either be of some high status or already have family who were U.S. citizens. So they would often essentially identities were sold on the black market in order to get in, and this was one of them. So he had to change his name. So this is what it says. This is 1919. They were not allowed to the United States unless they could prove they were citizens of high status, a scholar, a merchant, a business owner, or a child of such a citizen. So his father had come over before and pretended to be one of these people. So he went back, got his son, abandoned his wife, and brought his son over here to have a better life. So the boy changed his name from Wong Jen Yao, became Tai Yao. So he was a paper son. And this is kind of, again, this ebook does not do things well, so I'm scrolling through this. So they come over. He comes to Angel Island. So that's what it says. At least they arrived at Angel Island. His father had been to America before. His father gets through immigration. They actually put him and held him. So he's put here, kind of shows him wrapped in a prison for a while. Basically turned into weeks. Basically he would stay for days and then weeks. And he was an artist, so there was no way for him to draw or do anything. He was just kind of stuck here until they would interview him. And then he was interviewed about everything, where he went to school, how many women his house had, and he had previously had to have memorized all this information, and he did, and he was able to get out. So you see him, he's greeting his father here. He's finally getting, his father's waiting for him and coming to get him up on Angel Island. And then basically he goes to a school in Sacramento. So they're going farther north than San Francisco. And his name was Americanized to Tyrus Wong. So he went from Wong Gung Yao, and they basically Americanized it to Tyrus Wong. So his original name was Wong Gung Yao. His paper name was Tai Yao, and then he was Americanized to Tyrus Wong. So that became his name. So he didn't like school. He didn't like science. He preferred art. He didn't like mathematics. Again, he liked doodling because he was an artist. So you kind of see that a little bit there. And then he goes through, his father had to go find work, so he was often left alone for months at a time. And he didn't have his mother. His mother was back in China. I don't think it was even more difficult to bring women over at the time. So essentially his father was gone for a long time, but his father would bring back scrap paper, and he would doodle on it with water because they didn't have ink. So that's what he was. He was an artist. But his father then borrowed enough money to send him to art school. So he went to the Otis Art Institute in Los Angeles, and he learned to draw Western art. And then he also did Chinese, specifically Chinese art, the simplicity of it. So you see him being able to do the watercolors here, which were still actually very popular in the US. So, and then basically he also, but in order to do this, he also had to work at the school as the school's janitor. So part of kind of scholarship or permission to come to the school, probably on limited, less funds, he worked at the school as well. So he graduated. It shows the art he would draw basically with the mop. He would create art. And he graduated at the top of his class, and then he started working as an in-betweener at Disney. Basically, he drew the backgrounds. So all the cartoons and stuff that they would see, the animated features, he drew the backgrounds with subtle changes. It was very boring. It was very tedious. That's what he did. That was the only job he was doing. Then came Bambi, and they were having trouble trying to illustrate Bambi and try to do the artwork for these big forest scenes. So he showed them how to do it using a mixture of Chinese art. So you have a picture. The story struck him because, of course, he lost his mother. Whether she was dead or alive, she was on the other side of the ocean. She was no longer part of his life. So he showed them how to do the art for how to make simple strokes jump from the page, which is similar to what basically how he combined Chinese art with American modern art. Unfortunately, because Disney loved the artwork, but of course, Chinese guy, this is still like the 1930s. So yeah, racism. And yeah, Walt Disney was racist and sexist. He wasn't a good person. I don't like Disney. So he was still only credited as a in-betweener when they did this. So if you ever watch Bambi and you see an in-betweener by the name of Tyrus Wong, you realize he's the actual artist. He's the one who designed, and it was his art ideas that gave you that animation. So, but then he was fired because there was a employee strike. And even though he had no part of it, they fired him anyway because Disney. And they're evil because Disney. So he never stopped painting. He did art on all sorts of things. I'm sure he had to do other jobs because, of course, he was fired from Disney. And there wasn't really a lot of animation studios. And again, he was Chinese. So, he did all sorts of things. You see his art here. He also, as he got older, he got into doing kites. So he made kites, and you have all this beautiful illustrations of this story. And then you have the final author's note. It's not a very long book. It's a short little children's book. It was an award winner for, I think, an American Library Association Asian American award recently. This is the last 5 years or so. So this kind of tells the story of the author and how you don't really see a lot of Asian people in art, and he had never heard of this guy. And basically, it's like Tyrus, after he illustrated, after he worked for Disney, he continued to do storyboards for Universal and all over Hollywood. So that's what he did. And he retired. He started doing kites and kite building in 2016. This guy died relatively, he died at 106. So in 2016, he died at 106. So that wasn't long ago. He lived a very long time. Died at 106. So, and essentially, he was one of these paper sons, which was common. This was very common, how these people got into the U.S. They had to lie because the U.S. was horrible with immigration. They have not changed. They still like to keep people out. Not as bad as Australia. Australia is worse. But the United States was very, very racist. And the West was very racist, particularly against the Chinese, because that's their main immigration. You have the Irish and the Italians coming over in the West, in the East. It's the Chinese and the Japanese, mostly the Chinese, and various Asian immigrants that are coming in the West. And it was eventually, you have anti-Chinese leaks, stuff like that. And then there's a whole thing where apparently there was a bubonic plague was going on right around right a little bit before and during the San Francisco earthquake that happened in Chinatown, because plague. And yes, I'm talking black plague, bubonic plague, rats. And it infiltrated the Chinese, and they didn't care because the Chinese, and you can't have plague. But that's another story. So this author kind of talks about them, a little bit about this. You have a little bit of history information, and you have the illustrator's note. And he was a huge influence on Asian American illustrators, because they heard of him because he was part of their community. And so, and then it has a little bit more, you have some historical information. This is the actual person. So you have his work and his family. And that's one of the reasons the artist and the author created this book, is because not a lot of people knew about him, and they wanted more Asian representation in art. So they created this pretty little picture book about this man. And then you have the information, of course, on the author and the illustrator. So the author, Julie Leung. So she's known for a couple other things. Looks like a series of the Mice and the Round Table trilogy, which apparently is some sort of Arthurian legend and Brian Jacques combined. So, and then she was inspired to tell this story after learning about his incredible journey and the Immigrant Artist. And then the artist here, let's see. So the artist, Chris Sasaki, I'm probably mispronouncing that. I will put it in the description. He was inspired by this guy and worked both in animation and illustrations. And he's a former character designer and illustrator for Pixar Studios, where he designed characters for Monster University and Inside Out. He also worked for Jim Henson and a couple of other houses, and he lives in Oakland, California. And it looks like she lives in New York. So both of them are Asian. It's a great picture book. This is not the best. Do not do the CD format. It's a pain in the butt. This thing has me scrolling, as you can see. I'm scrolling here. I would have loved to have the physical picture book, but I have a toddler. I don't necessarily want to bring a picture book from the library to destroy it if it would get destroyed to my home. So I did the ebook. It was easier. But physical book for this copy, this is a pain in the butt. Having to scroll through this. And again, it won't let me do this. So I can't see the illustrations quite as well as I would like. But they are, from what I can see. I mean, these are very beautiful, even in ebook form. It's just not, it's not being seen as the author would have intended. So, but that's it for this review. Again, it's not very long. This is a very good book. It's a very pretty story. It's a very short story about this man. If you absolutely, utterly love Disney, it's probably not a good idea. I don't. Not fond of Disney. I'm not surprised at the way they treated him, because Disney. I mean, Bambi came out. I mean, this was probably the 1930s, maybe the 1940s. Disney was racist. Most people were racist back then, at least, you know, against the Chinese, and this was the West Coast, so they weren't going to treat him well. It's like he's a second-class citizen, and it kind of sucked. But now he's credited. People are aware. This story is aware. If you decide to watch Bambi, this is not one of the Disney films I will show my child. It's depressing. Last thing I want is to traumatize my child with a deer getting shot, having a main character's mother die. Yes, I saw it as a child. Yes, it's traumatizing. But the artwork was probably absolutely fantastic. It was groundbreaking, and it was done by this guy, not white guys, because it's influenced by Chinese, the simplistic art. So, and I believe it probably won awards for its animation. So this guy was, and then he was proceeded to be fired. So it's like, we don't care that you're not part of the artist strike. We're just going to get rid of you. And then he continued to do a bunch of other stuff. So he was very little known in the wider world, and now you do. So hopefully with this picture book and possibly this review, people know about this artist. And this man who lived a very, very long life. I mean, 106 is a long, long time. Guy came over to the U.S. in 1916. I mean, the world has completely changed since then. So this is a great book. Highly recommend it. I'll put the link in the description. Again, I borrowed it from my library in ebook form. Don't do that. Borrow it from your library. Just don't do it in ebook form. Picture books really, really don't do well. I think I've seen one so far that's done okay in ebook form, but picture books do not do well in ebook form. So, not much else with this review. It's obviously done by Asian, both artist and writer did this, which is kind of my focus this month when I'm doing people of color. I try to pick books and films that are done by the people that it's talking about. Films is a heck of a lot harder, but books I can normally do. So that's one of the reasons I chose this book. I originally was actually going to do a short story book called The Rainbow People, but it's out of print. And that's something I own in physical form, but again, out of print. So I found this one in ebook form. So that's it for this review. If you like what you see throughout February, this video is being shot in June. So I'm doing both African American History Month as well as celebrating the Lunar New Year by doing a lot of Asian inspired both films and books. So that's what's going on the rest of this month. If you want to check out the rest of this videos, excuse me, I did food stuff in January. I have a bunch of other fun stuff coming in March. I did Christmas stuff in December. I did like 5 videos a week in October. Native American stuff went on in November, as well as some Tamora Pierce and some other fun films. Harry Potter leaked through from October, so it's September to October. I also did some fun, more Tamora Pierce stuff in September, and then fun films as well, just to balance off both the Harry Potter and the heaviness of November, because some of the Native American stuff is, while the books are fantastic, the topic can be a little heavy. So, otherwise I have a bunch of other book reviews, family film reviews, a sprinkling of secular, aka non-religious, homeschooling reviews, a little bit of travel, kids travel stuff, and a whole bunch more planned. So like and subscribe. Thank you.